Hey, what's up guys, I'm Josh. I was just playing like a mental game the other day and I was like, okay, what would I do today if I woke up and I had like no audio equipment whatsoever? I just had what I have and my knowledge outside of audio equipment. How would I spend $1,000? Now this really got me thinking about what I would personally spend, and then it got me thinking about how I would suggest others spend that money, because it's actually very different. It really depends on what you have. So I'm going to be going over two systems today. One is what I would personally do given the tech items that I have that are not audio related, and because it matters what you're starting with. And then I have a system that would be applicable to anybody with basically any level of tech equipment. And both of these systems are going to cost $1,000. Actually, the one for other people is going to come in a little bit under $1,000, which is going to be really cool. So me personally, I'm pretty invested in the Apple ecosystem, which means I get to reap the benefits and the drawbacks of the Apple ecosystem. But one of the benefits is that their laptops have a fantastic headphone output. So that's just a byproduct of what they have. So what I would personally do is not actually spend any money on a separate amplifier, more just get things that play well with what I already have. So the two things that I would get here, and it's only two, is I would get a Meze 109 Pro. This is a very efficient full-size open back headphone. I named it Headphone of the Year for 2022. You can watch that video. I'll try to link it down below if I remember. But one of the big benefits of this headphone is that it's just super efficient. And while it doesn't sound its best on this laptop, it sounds better with a full-size amplifier. It's certainly not required to get a great sound out of this. And between the comfort and the build quality and the sound characteristics, I know I love it. I know it's one of like the better headphones at this price. Other considerations for me would be something like an Alex would be also in the running here. I think this is a little bit more comfortable for me personally though. And I think comfort is like, you know, if it's going to be your only device, you know, it's important for it to be comfortable, I think. The second thing I'm going to add, and this is just because of life, not because of any hi-fi characteristics, is AirPod Pros 2. Specifically, you can buy a renewed pair of AirPod Pros 2 for $200, and that brings the $800 and the $200 together to make about $1,000. Now, like I said, I'm not really buying these for their hi-fi characteristics, more just their use case with things like my laptop and my phone. They're just so hard to beat for a mobile IEM that has like noise cancellation stuff, and I use these more than most things right now. I know that, so this is probably one of the things that I would pick up first, and definitely probably would be in my first like $1,000 that I would spend. Now, I like to talk about where these systems fail, where they don't have like good attributes, where they could be better. One of the things that this could be better with is like future-proofing with something like a dedicated amplifier. So if I spent a little bit less on the headphones and more introduced like a DAC and amp, you know, I could upgrade headphones later down the road and I would already have a system ready and able to play those. Also, in terms of like the hi-fi sound, it's only one sound signature, and that is, you know, one sound signature. Ultimately, I think we all get a little bit used to what we have, and it's good to have different flavors because that helps you from getting bored of any one piece of gear. And I think that, you know, I know myself pretty well, and I think a lot of other people are similar to me, where you'd get kind of bored with just one, you know, really good headphone. So thinking about this, thinking how you'd get bored with just one headphone, the second build we have here, I think really addresses that problem and is actually a lot more fun and is totally what I would actually recommend most people spend $1,000 on. I really thought about this a lot in terms of what I would recommend and why. And I think I have a pretty well-balanced system here that incorporates a lot of different things and a lot of use cases, and actually, again, comes in under $1,000, which is great. Okay, first thing, you knew this is coming, HC6XX. The thing about the 6XX is like even people who have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, like myself, still listen to these things all the time. And they have a really unique sound signature that isn't really perfectly replicatable by any other headphone. And for the $240 that those cost, they are still very unique and definitely worth the money. I'm also going to throw in a complimentary headphone that picks up some of the slack that the 6XX has, which is the Sundara. I think for about $500, these are one of the two most obvious headphones that people should buy, and I think would buy again if they already own them. They are both individually very good values, but together they don't cover the same territory. So the 6XX does mid-range very well, but it doesn't have a ton of top end, it doesn't have a ton of sound staging, and it doesn't have a ton of bass response. Now what the 6XX does is has a super centered like vocal and mid-range performance, and it seems very close and tucked in and tight in your head. Now the Sundara is a little bit different than that, and the Sundara kind of opens things up. It doesn't quite have that super finite, really tucked in experience. It's a lot more open sounding. And because of that, they complement each other very well, and you get two different takes on your headphones. Now these are both open back. So I thought, okay, what about like a closed back headphone? What would I add? And I actually think that I would go with an IEM. And the IEM that I would go with is an IEM that I loved when I reviewed it, but I've used extensively since I reviewed it, and I like it more than I even did then, which is rare for my like of a product to actually increase over time. And that's going to be the C Audio Midnights. This is a critical collaboration. These are about $200, so that's going to bring our total up to about $740. So these basically are going to act as your IEM choice and your closed back headphone, and it's going to fill some of the gaps that both the Sundara and the 6XX have. One, it's going to be able to go mobile, so it's got a physical attribute difference than those two headphones do. It's also very easy to drive, so you could use it off of a laptop output or a phone if you wanted to. And I would personally recommend that, and I think most people are going to be fine with any modern equipment. The other thing is that the bass response is just simply better than both of those headphones. Those headphones are not known for having spectacular bass for the money. That's just not what their good characteristics are. But the Midnight has really, really, really good bass for the money. But it also sounds relatively complete and might even be the most complete headphone of those two, though it doesn't have the extremes of either of their benefits. So the Sundara sound stage is a lot better than that does. It also might be a little bit more detailed than the Midnight is. But the 6XX has that mid-range performance, that centered vocalist that the Midnight can't quite replicate. It has that mid-range warmth and texture to it that the Midnight doesn't have. But the Midnight has other things that are very good, like that bass response. The mid-range is also somewhere in between the Sundara and the 6XX. The sound staging for an IEM is also very, very good, and definitely not a compromise. The imaging is also fantastic, and the top end is very detailed for a $200 IEM. It's hyper competitive, if not one of the best in that price range for IEMs. And personally, I think it's totally worth it. This is like an easy recommendation. And I think what I like about these three headphone choices is that there isn't a ton of crossover for sound signature. They all sound very unique and very different. And when you're talking about that boredom factor, this keeps you from getting bored, as having like so many different choices. Now, what to do with the rest of the money? I think there's about $260 left over. I decided to go with, instead of my usual choice, which is the topping DX3 Pro Plus, I decided to go with the FIO K7. This is a newer, balanced, it's an upgrade to the older legacy FIO K5, which a lot of people are familiar with. Now, while this isn't as versatile as the DX3 Pro is with not having Bluetooth, it doesn't have a remote, stuff like that, it does have one feature to the sound characteristic that I think benefits all of these headphones, which is going to be a slight bump in bass over that DX3 Pro. And considering the fact, like I said, that the 6XX and the Sundara don't have like spectacular bass compared to more bass focused headphones, I think the K7 is a really good addition to that sound. And it serves as a good starting point for upgrading to bigger, more demanding headphones down the road. The K7 also has a pretty good form factor and really good input options. So you can basically use it with any computer that has USB outputs, any laptops that have USB outputs, or a TV that has optical outputs, and you can get that sound to play out your headphones. Now, I think some people might want to skip this. I think with headphones like the Sundara and like the 6XX, it would be a mistake to not get a dedicated amplifier like this. I think that's going to really set these headphones up for success in terms of their sound signature. It's going to help them sound really, really full and fulfilled. And when you go with something like a phone or even like a laptop, like, I don't think that this MacBook can really drive a Sundara to its maximum potential. So I think a lot of people who are new don't really see the value in a dedicated amplifier, but when you get into these more demanding headphones, they are really recommended and in some cases required depending on the efficiency of the headphone. So this leaves us $60 left over. If you wanted, you could stop here, but there is one factor that we haven't considered yet, which is that the FIO K7 is a balanced amplifier, which it does have an unbalanced but weaker output, and both the Sundara and the 6XX do not come with a balanced cable for it. So if you really want to complete the system, I would spend those $60 extra on 4.4 millimeter balanced cables for both the 6XX and the Sundara, and you can find each of those for under $25. I'll leave links to some Amazon ones that seem like they're very cost-effective options, and that I think is going to complete the $1,000 build that I would have. Now, in terms of the benefits and the drawbacks of the system, the benefits are you get a ton of different types of sounds, you get a lot of experience, you get many different types of products, and you get to kind of find what you like and don't like. Now, let's say you don't like the Sundara, you can sell that and buy something else and slip that into your little collection of audio products. In terms of downsides, there is a serious argument for maximizing the sound quality for the money. So like if you have $1,000 to spend, what sounds better, like a 6XX and a FIO K7 or a Focal Clear OG, which I think are $999, I think, and just like a phone or a laptop? That's always been one of the arguments that I've made in the past, is just like going with a higher end efficient headphone, and you don't have to spend as much, if any, depending on the headphone, on amplification. And I do think that that is a legitimate discussion that you have to have, is like, you know, what do you want with your system? Do you want versatility and options, or do you want the maximum sound quality that you can get for the money? Or do you want sort of the best of both worlds, which is what I wanted to get with my personal $1,000 system, with the 109 offering really, really good sound quality, because I can do it without needing to get a dedicated amplifier. But I also get the massive versatility that AirPod Pros 2 offer. So I kind of get the best of both worlds there, but it's not nearly as wide ranging or as fun as I think the 6XX Sundara Midnight and K7 system is. Now, the good news is that these are all options. None of these are required for you to buy them. They are not like the only things that you can buy for the money. There are so many different ways to make a $1,000 system. I just want to give you some options and kind of how I would probably recommend spending it for most people. But again, it's really enticing to get something like an Alex or like a 109 Pro or like a Clear OG. You know, those are all legitimate options that I think you should also consider. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to go. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys, you know, some other time, maybe, if you ever come back.